I never imagined spending my 68th birthday inside an abandoned auto garage on the south side of Atlanta, surrounded by the smell of oil and dust. Yet there I was, fumbling with an old brass key that felt heavier than it should, tears blurring my vision while my son's words replayed in my mind. "You're just a useless old woman. Mama, what would you even do with a real inheritance?" Daddy knew that. The key finally turned, the door groaned open, and my flashlight cut through decades of darkness until the beam caught on something glinting in the shadows. For a second, I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be what Henry Robb Brooks meant when he left me just a garage in his will. But to understand how I got here, homeless on my birthday, clutching the remnants of 42 years of marriage, you need to start earlier that day. The law office downtown felt cold despite the Georgia heat. Across the table, my son Jamal adjusted his cufflinks, impatient in his tailored suit, while Aisha Grant, our family attorney for decades, prepared to read the will. "Before I begin," she said, "everything is legally binding and reflects Mr. Brooks's precise instructions." I should have known that was a warning. Her words blurred together until the part that split my life in two. To my son, Jamal Brooks, I leave the Buckhead penthouse and my primary investment portfolio. To my beloved wife, Evelyn Brooks, I leave the property at 1420 Vine Street, the Brooks Auto Garage and its contents. A garage. After 42 years of partnership, love, and sacrifice, my husband left me a garage. Jamal's expression shifted from grief to triumph. He leaned close, his hand pressing on my shoulder a little too hard. "Don't worry, Ma. I'll make sure you're taken care of." I was too stunned to speak, my mind spinning with disbelief. That night, the disbelief hardened into pain. When we arrived back at what I still called our home, the penthouse overlooking Atlanta, Jamal set my suitcase down in the foyer. "I think it's best if you find somewhere else to stay," he said flatly. "The penthouse is mine now. Designers come tomorrow. I'm turning Dad's study into my office." I stared at him. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You could stay with Aunt Denise," he shrugged. "Or there's always that garage Daddy left you. Maybe open a mechanic shop at your age." His laugh sliced through me. "Jamal," I whispered, "this is my home. Your father and I—" "It's not your home anymore," he cut me off. "It's mine. Daddy made that clear." I steadied myself on a chair, pleading, "You can't expect me to leave tonight." He looked at me, eyes cold, voice final. "You're just a useless old woman. Mama, what would you even do with a real inheritance?" Daddy knew that. I said nothing. I simply walked out clutching my purse, my suitcase, and the key Aisha had given me. Hours later, I stood on an empty street in Atlanta's West End, staring at a crumbling brick building with a padlock on its door. The night air smelled of rain and exhaust. When the lock clicked open, I pushed the door and stepped into darkness that hummed with history. The air was still, but not dead. It carried the faint scent of leather and polish. My flashlight swept across the room, and the light froze on three shapes beneath custom covers, perfectly arranged in a spotless space that should have been filthy. My breath caught as I pulled back the first cover, a 1964 Aston Martin DB5, silver birch, its chrome gleaming like moonlight. "Rob," I whispered, "what were you doing?" He'd never mentioned collecting cars, never hinted at such a secret. Yet here stood a museum of beauty and precision. I pulled the second cover, a 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, deep blue, shining like a jewel. The third, a 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4, rich red like the wine Rob always ordered on our anniversaries. Each had a leather folder, documents, maintenance logs, purchase certificates. I wasn't an expert, but even I knew these were worth millions. On the wall beside the light switch, an envelope waited with my name in Rob's handwriting. My shaking hand tore it down, and when I flipped the switch, the room came alive. Modern LEDs glowed across polished floors. Climate vents hummed softly. This wasn't an abandoned garage. It was a hidden vault. I sat on a leather bench, opened the envelope, and began to read. "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you found what I built for you. I'm sorry for the shock. The secrecy was never meant to hurt you, but to protect you. 6 years ago, when doctors told me about my heart, I knew time was short. I needed to make sure you'd be safe. You're wondering why I left the penthouse to Jamal. The truth is, I watched our son change. The boy we raised became someone harder, someone who might control you instead of caring for you. So I left him what he values, status and image, and left you the real wealth. The cars alone are worth over $12 million. Behind our photo from Charleston is a safe. The combination is our anniversary. Inside, you'll find documents for properties and accounts transferred to your name. If Jamal proves himself kind and worthy, share what you choose. If not, this inheritance is your independence. All my love, Rob. By the time I finished, tears blurred every line. He had known. He had seen the arrogance, the coldness, the part of our son I'd refused to acknowledge. And he'd built this sanctuary to protect me. Morning light revealed details I'd missed. An office stocked with bottled water, a shower, clothes in my size. Rob had prepared even for this night. Among the papers in the safe, I found a deed to a cottage on Sullivan's Island, South Carolina, our favorite place by the sea, purchased quietly in my name. I wasn't homeless after all. I had a home, a future, and a husband who had loved me enough to plan beyond his life. I called the number Rob had left for his advisor, Caleb Whitaker. His smooth, southern-tinged voice carried respect. "Mrs. Brooks, I've been expecting your call. Your husband was meticulous. I'll help you with anything you need." 2 hours later, he arrived, silver-haired, poised, carrying a leather portfolio. Over coffee from his thermos, he explained Rob's plan. The valuations, the storage fees prepaid for years, the investments carefully structured. "Your husband believed in tangible beauty," he told me. "Something you could touch and cherish. He wanted you to see your worth reflected in something enduring." When he left, I sat among the gleaming cars, the silence humming with meaning. Less than a day earlier, I'd been cast aside as useless. Now I understood Rob's final lesson. He'd left me not charity, but choice. Independence disguised as a secret. That night, my phone rang. Jamal. "Ma, where are you? Aunt Denise said you never called her." "I'm fine," I answered evenly. "I found somewhere to stay." "Well, come by tomorrow and clear your stuff. Designers start at 9. No apology. No concern. Only orders." "I'll be there," I said, and after hanging up, I called Caleb again. "I need a lawyer who understands estates," I told him. By the time the moon climbed above the cracked windows, I had appointments set with legal and financial advisors. I looked around at the immaculate space my husband had built in secret and whispered, "You knew him better than I did. Rob." Then I lay down on the leather sofa, no longer a discarded widow, but a woman reborn, misjudged, underestimated. Holding the keys to her freedom, Morrow, I would walk into my son's penthouse not as the helpless mother he dismissed, but as the woman his father had quietly made unbreakable. The next morning, I arrived at the Buckhead penthouse precisely at 8:45, dressed in a navy pantsuit I'd found in the garage closet. The fit was perfect, the tag still attached. Rob had thought of everything, right down to my size. The building's marble lobby gleamed as always, but the air felt colder, stripped of familiarity. When Jamal opened the door, he barely glanced up from his phone. The moment I stepped inside, I knew the home I'd loved for 15 years was already gone. The hallway walls were bare where family photos once hung, leaving pale rectangular ghosts. Decorative pieces were missing, replaced by the scent of paint primer and designer ambition. Jamal gestured toward a stack of cardboard boxes. "I've boxed up your personal stuff. The designers get here at 9:30, so we need to be efficient." I forced a polite smile. "Good morning to you too, Jamal. I see you've started redecorating." He shrugged, walking toward the master bedroom. "No point waiting. The place needs a full update to maximize value." "Value?" I repeated quietly, following him. "You're planning to sell it?" "Eventually," he said without hesitation. "I'll live here a year, maybe 2, then flip it. Market's hot. Easy profit." His casual dismissal of the home his father and I built stung more than I expected. "And your father's things?" He waved toward more boxes in the corner. "I kept the Rolex and the cufflink collection. The rest is just clothes and old man stuff. Take whatever you want. The rest goes to donation." I knelt beside one of the boxes and lifted the lid. Inside were Rob's books, his collection of vintage fountain pens, the cardigan I'd given him last Christmas, still faintly scented with his cologne. Every item was a memory, now reduced to clutter. My chest tightened, but I stayed silent. Jamal checked his watch, impatience flickering. "Can't you hurry this up, Ma? It's just stuff. You don't even have a place to put it all." I looked up at him and for the first time really saw him. The same handsome face as Rob, but none of his softness. When had ambition replaced empathy? "I have a place," I said calmly, "and I'll take as much time as I need. These aren't just possessions, Jamal, they're pieces of a life." He rolled his eyes. "Fine, I've got calls to make. Just be done before 9:30. He left without another word, the echo of his footsteps fading into the hollow apartment. I worked in silence, carefully selecting the things that mattered. Rob's journals, our photo albums, the Venetian glass vase we'd bought on our anniversary trip. Each item I packed was a farewell. When I finished, I found Jamal in what used to be Rob's study. The mahogany desk his father loved was gone, replaced by a cold sheet of glass on metal legs. "I'm finished," I said from the doorway. "Great. Need help carrying stuff down?" "That would be appreciated," I replied. "But I'd like a few minutes alone first. 15 years of memories deserve that." He hesitated, something like guilt flickering in his eyes before he nodded. "Sure, just lock up when you're done. I've got to meet the designers." He brushed past me and was gone. The apartment was silent again. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, remembering laughter, late-night talks, shared meals. In our bedroom, I opened the closet one last time. At the back, half hidden, sat Rob's old leather messenger bag. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed in his familiar handwriting. "If you find this, Evelyn, it's an extra copy of everything in the garage safe, just in case." Even now, he was protecting me. I tucked the envelope safely into my purse, a quiet promise to keep his wisdom close. When the doorman helped load my boxes into my car, I looked up at the gleaming tower one last time. Instead of grief, I felt clarity. The penthouse had been a symbol of success, but Rob's true gift lay elsewhere, in the independence he'd built for me piece by piece, in secret. I drove straight to the office of Patricia Winters, the estate attorney Caleb had recommended. She greeted me with a firm handshake and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Brooks, I've reviewed the documents you sent. Your husband created an extraordinary estate plan." "I'm still trying to comprehend it all," I admitted. Patricia nodded. "It's airtight. The trusts are valid, the transfer's clean. What matters now is your next step. What do you want to achieve?" I thought carefully. "I need to secure my future, find a permanent home, and understand my finances completely. And I need to decide how to handle my relationship with my son." Her expression softened. "That last part may take time. For now, let's get you settled. You should visit the Sullivan's Island property soon. If it suits you, make it your base." By the end of our meeting, I had a plan. Visit the cottage, review the financial accounts, and make no rush decisions about the cars. When I left Patricia's office, my phone buzzed. A message from Jamal. "Designers love the space. Full gut renovation approved. Dropped your photo albums at Aunt Denise's. No apology, no warmth." Just another dismissal of memories he couldn't price. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked a hotel for the night near Sullivan's Island. The next morning, I'd drive east and see the home Rob had built for me. The coastal drive felt like breathing after years underwater. The highway curved along the marshlands, Spanish moss swaying in the humid air. When I reached Sullivan's Island by late afternoon, sunlight shimmered on the water like melted gold. I followed winding streets until I found it, a small stone cottage tucked behind cypress trees, private and perfect. The key from Rob's file slid smoothly into the lock. Inside, I stopped short. Every detail felt like a conversation with my late husband. Warm wood floors, bookshelves filled with my favorite authors, soft blues and creams that matched the tones of our old living room. The kitchen was charming, modern yet familiar. In the small study hung a watercolor painting of the Charleston Harbor, where Rob had first told me he loved me. We'd lost the original years ago, but here was an exact replica. My throat tightened. Even in death, he was still taking care of me. A soft knock startled me. On the porch stood an elegant woman in her 70s holding a casserole dish. "You must be Evelyn," she said with a smile. "I'm Loretta McCoy, your neighbor. Rob told me to keep an eye out for when you arrived." "You knew Rob?" I asked, surprised. She nodded. "He came by often, making sure everything was perfect for you. Said you liked peace and the sound of the ocean. He made me promise not to reach out until you were ready." I invited her in. Over tea, Loretta told me how Rob had spent years preparing this place, bringing photos of our penthouse to replicate its comfort. "He wanted you to feel at home," she said gently. "He said this cottage was his love letter to you." By the time she left, I understood just how deeply Rob had planned every detail, not just financial security, but emotional safety too. That night, I slept in the cozy bedroom, the ocean whispering through the open window, and for the first time since his death, my dreams were peaceful. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the wooden floors. In the study, I found another envelope tucked into the desk drawer, dated 3 months before Rob died. "My dearest Evelyn, if you found this, you've reached the cottage. I hope it brings you peace. Use it however you wish. A home, a retreat, a place to start again. You've spent your life caring for others. Now it's your turn. All my love, Rob." I pressed the paper to my heart. His love reached across time, still guiding me. Over the following days, I explored the island, met neighbors, and learned the rhythms of this quiet coastal town. Each morning, I walked the beach. Each evening, I returned to the cottage that now truly felt mine. But on the 4th day, my phone rang. "Mom," Jamal's voice snapped through the speaker, tight with irritation. "Where are you? Aunt Denise says you're not staying with her." "I'm taking some time for myself," I said evenly. "What does that mean?" "You can't just disappear." "I'm not disappearing, Jamal. I'm reflecting." "Reflecting?" His tone turned cold. "This isn't like you. People will talk. Let them," I replied. "I've earned my peace." A pause. Then his voice shifted, forced calm over frustration. "Actually, I called because I found some of Dad's old notes. References to investments not mentioned in the will. Do you know anything about that?" "No," I said truthfully. "Your father handled most of our finances." "Well, maybe Mr. Grant missed something," he muttered. "I'll figure it out." When the call ended, I sat in silence, the weight of Rob's foresight pressing on me. Jamal was beginning to dig. He'd sensed there was more, and soon he would uncover it. The test Rob spoke of in his letter was underway, and it was only a matter of time before my son discovered the truth and revealed who he truly was. A week passed in quiet rhythm. Mornings began with the cry of seagulls and the smell of salt drifting through the cottage windows. I cooked breakfast while the ocean whispered outside, each sunrise reminding me that healing didn't come from comfort, it came from solitude. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. The tension that had followed me since Rob's death was starting to loosen, but peace rarely lasts long when secrets exist. It began with a phone call from Caleb Whitaker. His tone was calm but edged with concern. "Mrs. Brooks, I thought you should know. Someone's been making inquiries about the vehicles." "Claims to be your son." I took a slow breath. "He contacted the collectors?" "Yes. He mentioned that the cars were part of your husband's estate and demanded documentation. Fortunately, all titles are secure in your name. But I wanted to alert you. He's suspicious." I thanked him and ended the call. My heart pounded, not from fear but disappointment. Rob had warned me this moment would come. Jamal's hunger for status wouldn't allow him to accept that something of value might have escaped his grasp. He would not stop until he found it. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed into the sea. The air was heavy with magnolia and salt. For a brief second, I wished Rob could see the colors. He'd painted sunsets like this once in his garage office, claiming each one reminded him of beginnings, not endings. My reverie broke when headlights swept across the driveway. A sleek black BMW rolled up, engine purring like a predator. My pulse quickened. I didn't need to see his face to know. The car door opened, and Jamal Brooks stepped out in a tailored jacket, sunglasses still on despite the fading light. His expression was somewhere between irritation and disbelief. "So this is where you've been hiding," he said, glancing around the property. "Nice little setup." I stayed seated on the porch swing, forcing my voice to remain even. "It's peaceful. Your father bought it years ago," he smirked. "Of course he did. Always had a thing for secret projects. Guess this was his retirement plan." He stepped closer, eyeing the well-kept garden, the ocean view, the soft glow from the cottage windows. "You've been busy, Mama, living it up while I handle everything he left behind." I looked up at him steadily. "You mean the penthouse? The stocks? You seem to be managing just fine." He removed his sunglasses, revealing the sharp impatience in his eyes. I went by the garage. I froze for a heartbeat, careful not to react. "The garage?" "Yeah," he said slowly. "Funny thing, doesn't look abandoned. The place is immaculate. Climate control, security, spotless floors. Not exactly what I'd call rundown." My fingers tightened on the edge of the swing. "Your father took pride in his workspaces." Jamal tilted his head. "That's not all. There are cars in there, rare ones. Aston Martin, Mercedes, Ferrari. Millions of dollars just sitting there. You want to tell me why Dad didn't mention that in the will?" His tone carried accusation more than curiosity. I stood, the fading sunlight catching the gray streaks in my hair. "Maybe because he wanted to leave you what you valued most, power. And he wanted to leave me what I valued, peace." He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Peace? Those cars aren't peace, Mama, they're wealth. Real wealth. That garage is worth more than everything I got combined." "Maybe it's time you realized," I said quietly, "that not everything in this world belongs to you." His smile disappeared. "You think you can just hide millions of dollars while I deal with debts and taxes? That's fraud. That's theft of inheritance. Fraud?" I repeated softly. "The documents are in my name. Your father made sure of that. You might want to ask yourself why." His jaw tightened, and I could see the boy he once was flicker behind his eyes. The one who used to bring me flowers from the backyard and promise he'd make us proud. But the man standing before me had lost that softness somewhere between ambition and greed. "You manipulated him!" Jamal snapped. "You made him change everything before he died." I stepped down from the porch, the sand cool beneath my bare feet. "Your father was dying, but he wasn't blind. He saw what you were becoming. He did what any father would. He protected the person who still believed in him." He took a step closer, voice low, almost trembling. "You think this is over? I'll get my lawyers. I'll get what's mine." "You already did," I said simply, "and you threw it away chasing appearances." His eyes darted toward the horizon, and for a brief second, uncertainty clouded his anger. "You really think you can cut me out?" "I'm his son, the rightful heir." "You're his son," I said softly. "But inheritance isn't always money, Jamal. Sometimes it's character. Sometimes it's wisdom. Those are the things you refuse to inherit." For a long moment we stood there, the ocean roaring between us like judgment. Then he turned abruptly, slipping on his sunglasses again. "You'll regret this," he said, voice trembling with rage. "I'll find a way to get what's owed to me." He walked back to the car, slamming the door so hard it echoed down the quiet street. The BMW roared to life and vanished into the twilight. I stayed there long after the taillights disappeared, the night wind tugging at my scarf. My hands shook, but not from fear. Rob's plan had been right. This confrontation was inevitable. Jamal's greed would push him further, and soon he would dig himself into a hole so deep he couldn't see daylight. When I finally went inside, the house felt both emptier and stronger. On Rob's desk, the letter from the night I arrived still lay unfolded, his handwriting catching the soft lamplight. "If Jamal shows the coldness I fear, this legacy will keep you from ever being at his mercy." I whispered, "You were right, Rob. The next morning, I met with Patricia Winters over video call to discuss what had happened. She listened carefully and then smiled faintly. You don't need to fear his threats. Everything your husband left you is legally bulletproof. The trusts, the deeds, the transfers, they're all clean. If he challenges it, he'll lose. Then let him try, I said, my voice steady. That night, as I sat by the window listening to the rhythm of waves against the shore, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, calm strength. Rob had given me more than wealth. He'd given me freedom. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Jamal wouldn't stop until he'd exhausted every angle. His pride wouldn't allow it. And when that pride finally cracked, I would be there. Not as the broken mother he dismissed, but as the woman his father had prepared me to become. 3 months passed. The Atlantic breeze had turned crisp, brushing through the marsh grass that surrounded my cottage on Sullivan's Island. Autumn came softly here, with bronze skies and the scent of pine salt drifting through open windows. I'd settled into a rhythm that felt almost holy. Mornings walking the beach, afternoons reading by the porch window, evenings cooking while the radio hummed jazz in the background. Yet peace rarely lasts where pride still breathes. I heard from Caleb Whitaker only once during that time, but his updates were precise. Your son has been contacting every dealer and auction house from Atlanta to Miami, he said over the phone. He's trying to verify ownership of the vehicles. He even offered someone a percentage to leak information. But the titles and trusts are sealed tight. Your husband covered every legal angle. I thanked him, but part of me ached anyway. I didn't want a war with my son. I wanted him to remember who he was before money became his god. A week later, I received a letter from Patricia Winters confirming my new legal filings. The cottage, the cars, and the funds were now consolidated under my independent trust, untouchable. Reading her words, I felt both relief and sorrow. Rob had built this fortress to protect me, but fortresses are lonely places. 2 nights later, rain lashed the coastline. I was reading in the study when headlights appeared through the downpour, followed by a frantic knock. I opened the door to find Jamal, drenched, suit rumpled, eyes bloodshot. He looked nothing like the man who'd swaggered into my yard 3 months ago. "Mama," he said, voice cracking, "I need help." For a moment, I couldn't move. My instinct, to comfort, to hold, to forgive, flared, but I steadied myself. "Come in," I said softly. He stepped inside, dripping water onto the polished floor. The smell of cologne mixed with rain and desperation. He ran a hand through his soaked hair, pacing like a man cornered. "Everything's falling apart," he muttered. "The renovation went over budget, investors pulled out, and I made some bad deals. The penthouse is being foreclosed. The company—" "There's nothing left," I listened quietly. "You said you were handling everything." I thought I was. He sank onto the sofa, shoulders shaking. "You were right. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to prove I could carry Dad's name." By erasing everything he stood for? My tone wasn't cruel, only honest. He looked up, eyes filled with shame. "I didn't mean to. When he gave you that garage, I thought he was insulting me. Like I wasn't enough." "He wasn't insulting you, Jamal. He was protecting you from yourself. From what greed does to a man." Tears welled in his eyes, and for the first time I saw the frightened boy I used to tuck in at night, not the arrogant businessman who'd thrown me out. "I lost everything, Mama," he whispered. "Even my name means nothing now." I sat across from him, folding my hands. "Maybe that's what needed to happen for you to find who you really are." He wiped his face roughly. "I need help. I don't want your money. I just need guidance, someone to show me how to start over." His voice broke something soft inside me. "Your father once said failure is a better teacher than success," I told him. "But you have to be willing to listen." "I am," he said quickly. "I'll do anything. I can't live like this," I studied him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by humility and exhaustion. "You'll stay here tonight," I said. "In the guest room. Tomorrow we'll talk." He nodded, eyes red, voice small. "Thank you, Mama." As he slept that night, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, staring at the storm rolling over the horizon. The sea crashed angrily against the rocks, mirroring the turbulence that had defined our family. Rob's words echoed in my mind. If Jamal proves himself worthy, share what you choose. Maybe this was the moment Rob had prepared me for. The moment not to punish, but to teach. My son was broken, and maybe that was the first step toward redemption. At sunrise, I brewed coffee and waited for Jamal to wake. He emerged quiet, eyes heavy but calmer. Over breakfast, I spoke clearly. You need to understand something, Jamal. What your father left me wasn't just wealth, it was responsibility. He trusted me to decide what kind of man you become next. I'll do whatever it takes, he said earnestly. I just need a chance. Then you'll start with honesty, I said. No shortcuts, no secrets. I'll help you, but only if you accept certain conditions. He nodded quickly. Anything? First, you'll work, not for me, but for yourself. I'll connect you with Caleb. He'll help you learn what real financial management looks like. You'll rebuild your credit, but you'll do it the right way. He swallowed hard. Okay. Second, you'll go to therapy. I want you to talk to someone about why you thought money was the only measure of worth. He looked away, embarrassed. Therapy? I don't need— Stop, I interrupted softly but firmly. You do, we both do. Losing your father broke something in us. We just handled it differently. He nodded slowly, shame giving way to understanding. You're right. And third, I said, meeting his eyes, you will never again use your father's legacy to hurt or control someone. Not me, not anyone. He looked down, voice quiet. I promise. The sincerity in his tone reminded me of the boy he once was. I reached across the table, touching his hand. Then maybe there's hope for you yet. Over the following weeks, Jamal began working with Caleb, learning the fundamentals his father had tried to teach him years ago. How to plan, how to earn honestly, how to think long-term. At first he struggled, frustrated by how little he understood. But slowly, humility grew where arrogance once lived. Each evening he joined me for dinner, often helping with chores around the cottage. One night, as we washed dishes side by side, he said quietly, I still don't understand why Dad didn't just tell me the truth. About the cars. About the money. Because he wanted you to learn value, not wealth, I said. And maybe he knew the only way to teach you was to let you fall. He dried a plate, nodding. I think I finally get it, I smiled faintly. Then he'd be proud of you. Life didn't heal overnight. There were days when old wounds reopened, when he snapped, or when I remembered the sting of being called useless. But each time, the silence afterward was filled with something new. Effort. The desire to mend. One morning, as the sun painted the water gold, Jamal joined me on the porch, 2 cups of coffee in hand. I've been thinking, he said quietly. When I get back on my feet, I want to do something that matters. Maybe reopen the old garage, not for profit. For kids, teach them cars, mechanics, discipline. Like Dad taught me, tears welled in my eyes. He'd love that, he smiled softly. You think he'd forgive me? I reached out, squeezing his hand. He already has. He left you the chance to become the man he always believed you could be. You just had to lose everything to see it. We sat there in silence, watching the waves crash and retreat. Both of us finally understanding what Rob had built, not just an inheritance, but a lesson in love, humility, and grace. That evening, as the sun sank low over Sullivan's Island, I walked down to the water, feeling the cool sand between my toes. The tide rolled in, erasing my footprints one by one. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry or lost or afraid. I whispered into the wind, We're going to be okay. Rob. And somewhere deep inside, I felt him answer, not in words, but in the quiet peace that finally filled my heart. By early spring, the scent of blooming azaleas drifted through the low-country air. The cottage on Sullivan's Island had become more than refuge. It was transformation. Each morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen table where Jamal and I shared quiet breakfasts. our conversations no longer strained by ego or resentment. He'd changed, not overnight, but through steady humility, one hard lesson at a time. Caleb often visited from Atlanta, guiding him through financial rehabilitation. "Your father's plan was genius," Caleb told him one afternoon, papers spread across the dining table. "He wanted you to understand responsibility before privilege." "You're doing just that." Jamal nodded, eyes tired but steady. "For the first time, I'm not chasing money. I'm learning what it means to earn it," Caleb smiled. "Your father would be proud of that sentence." After Caleb left, I found Jamal standing by the porch rail, watching the tide roll in. "He's right, I said softly. "You're finally walking in your father's footsteps, just not the ones you imagined." He exhaled slowly. "I think about him every day. I keep hearing him say, 'Don't measure your life in profit margins, son. Measure it in the people who trust your word.' I never listened." "He knew you'd find the meaning when you were ready," I said. "That's why he built such a complicated legacy, so you'd have to work to understand it." That night, Jamal brought in an old notepad filled with sketches and plans. "I've been thinking about reopening the garage," he said. "Not as a business, but as a youth program. Teach kids from the community about mechanics, engineering, business basics. Give them something real to build on." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "That's exactly what your father would have wanted." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I can finally do something right." The following weeks were a blur of calls, paperwork, and trips between Charleston and Atlanta. Jamal found the perfect location, a smaller warehouse near where the original Brooks Auto once stood. He contacted schools, nonprofits, and local sponsors. For the first time, his drive wasn't greed. It was purpose. Watching him work reminded me of Rob in his prime, focused, steady, passionate. Sometimes when Jamal leaned over his plans, the late sunlight catching the edges of his face, I could almost see his father standing behind him, proud and smiling. One afternoon, Jamal approached me holding a thick envelope. "Mama," he said softly, "I want to show you something." Inside were documents, partnership agreements, a nonprofit registration, and a title deed with both our names on it. "The Brooks Foundation for Youth Mechanics," it read. I looked up, speechless. "I want you on the board," he said. "You're the reason this exists." "You and Dad." My hands trembled as I hugged him. "You've turned pain into purpose, baby. That's the greatest inheritance you could ever honor." The grand opening came on a bright Saturday morning. The smell of fresh paint and motor oil filled the air as music played from a small speaker. Kids from local schools explored the workshop, touching gleaming tools and restored engines. Reporters came, snapping photos of the new beginning that rose from a family's broken past. When it was time for the ribbon cutting, Jamal handed me the scissors. "This is yours," he said quietly. I smiled, eyes glistening. "No, son. It's ours." The crowd cheered as the ribbon fell and cameras flashed, but I wasn't looking at them. I was watching Jamal shake hands with a group of wide-eyed teenagers, his laughter genuine, his pride pure. In that moment, I saw the man Rob had always believed he could become. After the ceremony, as evening shadows stretched across the lot, Jamal stood beside me, gazing at the restored sign above the entrance, Brooks Auto Legacy Center. "He'd like it, wouldn't he?" Jamal asked. I nodded. "He'd love it. He always said legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's who we raise up." He smiled. "I finally understand that now." We stood there in silence, the hum of the city around us, the soft wind carrying the scent of gasoline and spring air, the same scent that once filled Rob's first garage decades ago. For the first time in years, I felt peace without pain. Later that night, back at the cottage, I found one last letter tucked into a drawer in Rob's old messenger bag. It was undated, just addressed simply, "For when the work is done." "Evie, if you're reading this, you've both found your way home." The garage was never about money. It was a map. A path for you and Jamal to find each other again. If he's beside you now, then my work is complete. Don't mourn me anymore. Live, laugh, build something new. My love, always. Rob. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears spilling silently as I looked out the window toward the moonlit water. Somewhere beyond the horizon, I felt his presence, not as loss but as light guiding us forward. Weeks turned into months, and the Brooks Auto Legacy Center flourished. Kids from all over Atlanta came to learn not just about engines, but about patience, teamwork, and dignity. Jamal became a mentor, not a mogul, and his laughter filled spaces that once echoed with arrogance. Every Friday, he called me before sundown. "Heading out, Mama," he'd say. "Just wanted to let you know the shop's closed and the kids are safe." "Proud of you?" "Son," I'd always reply. On one of those evenings as we ended our call, I looked toward the sea and whispered, "We did it." "Rob, we really did." The waves rolled in softly, and for the first time since his passing, I didn't feel the ache of absence. I felt the peace of completion. Summer came to Sullivan's Island in a rush of warmth and gold. The days stretched longer, the air thick with the hum of cicadas and salt. Life had found a rhythm again. The garage that had once symbolized betrayal and pain was now reborn as a sanctuary of purpose and redemption. Every week, Jamal drove down from Atlanta to visit me. His hands no longer manicured but marked with grease. His smile no longer calculated but genuine. He'd changed in ways no inheritance ever could. The sharpness in his tone had softened. The impatience that once ruled him had melted into gratitude. Watching him laugh with the neighborhood kids who helped him at the Legacy Center, I realized that the same boy who once chased wealth had finally discovered worth. One evening, after dinner, he brought his laptop to the porch. "I want to show you something," he said, setting it down beside my tea. The screen glowed with photos, kids working on cars, young girls learning welding, families attending weekend workshops. In one image, Jamal knelt beside a teenage boy, guiding his hands through the gears of an old transmission. "That's Devin," Jamal said. "He used to skip school every week. Now he's talking about going to trade college. Says he wants to teach one day." I smiled through tears. "That's what your father meant when he said real wealth multiplies through kindness. You're living his lesson." He closed the laptop, eyes thoughtful. "You know, Mama, when I was standing in that penthouse arguing with you, I thought I'd lost everything. Now looking back, that was the day I started living for real." "That's what loss does when you let it teach you," I said softly. "It strips away the noise until only truth remains." He nodded, then hesitated. "There's one thing left I've been meaning to say." His voice trembled slightly. "I'm sorry for what I said to you that day, for throwing you out, for calling you useless. I don't know how you could ever forgive that." The air around us seemed to still. I reached across the small porch table, taking his hand in both of mine. "I already did," I whispered. "Long before you asked. You were broken, Jamal. Hurt people say cruel things when they're lost, but I never stopped being your mother." He bowed his head, tears slipping silently down his face. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The cicadas sang, the tide whispered against the shore, and the night carried the peace of a wound finally closing. When he looked up, his face was wet, but his eyes shone clear. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning that forgiveness," he said. "You already have," I told him. Later that summer, Jamal hosted the first annual Brooks Legacy Community Fair, a celebration that brought together the students, volunteers and sponsors who had supported the garage. Families from across the city attended. Kids raced go-karts they'd built from scratch, local chefs donated food, and a jazz band played beneath strings of lights. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching my son move among them, greeting people, laughing easily, grounded in purpose. At sunset, Jamal took the small stage built in front of the restored garage doors. The words Brooks Auto Legacy Center glowed behind him in bronze letters. He held the microphone with a steady hand, the same confidence he once used for business meetings now repurposed for something far greater. "My father believed in second chances," he said, voice strong and clear. "He believed that failure isn't the end. It's the start of understanding. Everything we do here is about giving that understanding to others. I lost myself once. But someone, He glanced toward me in the crowd, believed I could be found again. This place is for every young person who thinks they've run out of chances. Because if you're still breathing, you still have one. Applause broke through the humid air, rippling like the tide. For a moment, I swore I felt Rob beside me, his hand brushing mine, his voice soft in my ear. You see, Evie? He found his way home. After the speech, Jamal joined me near the edge of the crowd. He'd be proud of you, I said, my voice trembling. You've done what I couldn't. You healed what he started. He looked at the building glowing in the twilight, the laughter echoing from inside. He gave us both the tools. We just had to learn how to use them. When the event ended, I helped stack chairs under the stars while the last of the music faded. The night air was cool against my skin, and as I looked at my son, sweaty, tired, smiling, I realized we had both finally become what Rob had always hoped we'd be, people who built instead of destroyed. Weeks later, the Legacy Center was featured in a local news story titled From Fortune to Forgiveness: How a Son Rebuilt His Father's Dream. The reporter's closing line echoed in my heart. Some inherit wealth. Others inherit wisdom. The lucky ones find both. Jamal sent me the article with a note attached. This one's for you and Dad. We built something real. Every Sunday morning after church, I'd sit by the sea with coffee and reread Rob's last letter. His words, once heavy with loss, now felt like gentle guidance for a new season. Legacy isn't what we leave. It's what we plant. By late August, Jamal had expanded the program to include mentorship for women in automotive trades, naming it Susan's Circle after me despite my protests. You taught me resilience, he said simply. Now it's my turn to pass it on. One evening, as I drove along the coastal highway in the Aston Martin, the same one that started it all, I realized how far we'd come, from betrayal to forgiveness, from loss to legacy. The wind swept through my hair, the ocean stretched endless beside me, and for the first time, I felt Rob's presence not behind me but ahead, leading me forward into the life he always wanted for us. Autumn returned to Sullivan's Island with quiet grace. The sea breeze grew cooler, carrying the scent of salt and pine through the open windows of my cottage. Life had softened again, not into stillness, but into peace. The foundation was thriving, Jamal was steady, and my days felt full in a way that didn't depend on noise or company. One morning, as I was rearranging the bookshelf in Rob's old study, a slim envelope slipped from between two volumes. It fluttered to the floor like a fallen leaf. My heart tightened the moment I saw his handwriting. Strong, deliberate, slightly slanted. The envelope was marked only with a single word: legacy. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a short letter and a small, worn key, not to the garage, not to the cottage, but something different. My dearest Evelyn, if you've found this, it means time has passed, and I trust you've begun to heal. This key belongs to a deposit box in Charleston, Box 118 at Magnolia Trust Bank. You may not need what's inside, but you'll understand why I left it there once you open it. Don't go alone. Take Jamal with you with all my love. Rabbi sat there in silence, the paper trembling in my hand. Even after death, he was still guiding me, still orchestrating moments like a composer conducting from eternity. Whatever he had hidden in that box, he'd wanted Jamal to discover it with me. That evening, as the sun burned low over the marsh, I called Jamal. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, Mama," he said. "You sound different. Everything okay?" "I found something," I replied. "Another letter. From your father." There was a pause. "What does it say?" "He left us a key to a safety deposit box in Charleston." He inhaled sharply. "After all this time?" "Yes," I said softly. "He wanted us to open it together." 2 days later, we stood inside the hushed marble lobby of Magnolia Trust Bank. The clerk escorted us to the private vault room, a quiet place lined with small brass doors. Box 118 waited behind one of them, untouched for years. The clerk handed me the box, then left us alone. My fingers shook as I inserted the key and turned the lock. The metal clicked open and the lid lifted smoothly. Inside lay a stack of documents, a sealed envelope, and a small velvet case. I opened the envelope first. Rob's handwriting greeted me again, this time more formal, almost businesslike, to my wife and my son. I kept one final part of my estate hidden, not out of secrecy, but out of faith. Faith that by the time you read this, you will have both grown into the people I always believed you could be. What you'll find here isn't about money. It's about meaning. Inside the folder are the original blueprints and title deed for the first Brooks Auto Garage, the one where I started with nothing but a wrench and a dream. It's still ours, legally and symbolically. I held on to it because I wanted it to come full circle, from labor to legacy, from pride to purpose. Jamal, if you've found this with your mother, it means you've chosen the latter. Use it wisely. Restore it. Rebuild it. Let it belong not just to our family, but to the community that gave us everything, with pride beyond words. Dad, I pressed the paper to my lips, eyes blurring with tears. Beside me, Jamal unfolded the blueprints, tracing the lines of the building that had started our story. He never let it go, Jamal whispered. All these years he kept the first garage, like a promise. I opened the velvet case next. Inside was a gold pocket watch, Rob's old one. On the inside of its lid was an engraving. Time reveals truth. Jamal touched the watch with reverence. He always said time was the only thing you can't buy back. And yet he found a way to make every second count, I said softly. We spent hours that day reviewing the documents. The property was still intact, its taxes quietly paid by Rob through a trust Caleb had unknowingly managed. When Jamal realized that the original Brooks Auto building still stood, unused but structurally sound, he laughed, a real, joyous sound that filled the quiet vault. "Mama," he said, voice trembling with emotion, "I think I know what he wanted us to do." 2 months later, construction began. The old garage in downtown Atlanta, the one where Rob had built his empire with grit-stained hands, came alive again. Not as a business this time, but as a community restoration space and mentorship hub. They named it Brooks Auto Heritage Hall. Inside, one wall displayed framed photos of Rob's early days, and beneath them hung the words, "Time reveals truth." At the grand reopening, people from every corner of the city gathered to honor a man whose foresight had reshaped not only his family, but his community. I stood beside Jamal as he delivered the dedication speech, the golden pocket watch glinting in his hand. "This," he said, gesturing around the room, "isn't about wealth or inheritance. It's about vision. My father built this place with his hands. My mother rebuilt it with her heart. Together they taught me that legacy isn't measured by what you leave behind, but by the lives you lift up." The applause was thunderous, echoing off the polished concrete and steel. I looked toward the far corner, where a photo of Rob in his younger days hung. His sleeves rolled up, his smile wide, the grease on his face like war paint. I whispered through tears, "You did it, baby. You brought us home." When the ceremony ended, Jamal slipped the watch into my palm. "You keep it," he said. He'd want that. I closed my fingers around it, feeling the cool weight, the pulse of memory beating through metal. That night, back at the cottage, I set the watch on my bedside table beside Rob's last letter. Through the window, the Atlantic shimmered under a half moon, waves whispering against the shore like his voice returning through time. I lay there in the dark, thinking about the journey, the betrayal, the pain, the discovery, and the rebirth, and I realized that everything Rob had done, every hidden plan, every letter, every key, had been his way of giving us not just security, but understanding. He'd taught us that time doesn't heal all wounds, truth does, and in that truth, we'd finally found each other again. A full year passed since the doors of Brooks Auto Heritage Hall reopened, and life had taken on a beauty I hadn't known in decades. The rhythm of each day felt purposeful, like music composed from love, memory, and redemption. The city had changed too. On the corner of Vine Street, where once stood a crumbling old garage no one cared about, now rose a place filled with laughter, learning, and second chances. Every morning, the wide bay doors rolled open to reveal rows of shining workbenches, refurbished tools, and eager faces. Children from Atlanta's South Side lined up in coveralls with grease under their nails and pride in their smiles. They came not for money, but for belonging. For mentorship, for family. And every time I visited, I felt Rob's spirit walking those aisles. The man who had built an empire with his hands and had somehow built his family back with his heart. That morning, the air inside the Heritage Hall buzzed with energy. A group of teenagers clustered around a half-restored 1972 Mustang, the same model Rob had once driven. Jamal stood beside them, explaining the carburetor system, sleeves rolled up, sweat on his forehead. I watched from the mezzanine above, unseen for a moment, letting the pride swell quietly in my chest. He spoke with confidence and warmth. You see, the engine doesn't care about mistakes. It just responds to effort. You treat it right, it'll run smooth. You rush it, you break it. Same goes for life. The kids nodded, hanging on his every word. I smiled. That was Rob's voice coming through him now, clear as sunlight. When class ended, Jamal climbed the stairs and hugged me tight. Didn't know you were coming, he said, his grin wide. I didn't plan to, I replied. Just wanted to see how my favorite mechanic was doing. Your favorite? He laughed. I'm your only mechanic. That's why it's an easy choice. We walked through the halls together, stopping by the memorial wall that bore Rob's portrait in black and white, eyes alive with determination. Below it were the words, built with hands, remembered with heart. Every time I see that, Jamal murmured, I realize how much he was still teaching us, even when he was gone. He never really left, I said softly. He just changed classrooms. The program had expanded far beyond its original scope. There was now a scholarship fund for trade students, a partnership with a local college, and even a small mentoring initiative for single mothers looking to learn business management. Jamal had transformed the name Brooks from a symbol of luxury into one of community. And though he worked hard, he'd learned to rest too, to slow down, to breathe, to enjoy life beyond profit. That evening, the foundation hosted a one-year anniversary gala in the newly renovated downtown atrium. Guests poured in dressed in shimmering black and gold, the theme colors of the original Brooks Auto. Photographs of the journey, from the run-down garage to the thriving center, decorated the walls. I stood quietly near a corner, taking it all in. Caleb approached with a glass of champagne. He'd be proud of you both, he said. I smiled. He already is. When it was time for speeches, Jamal took the stage. He looked calm, grounded, no trace of the arrogance that once shadowed him. A year ago, he began, this place was just an idea, a way to honor my father. But what I didn't realize then was that legacy doesn't just belong to the past. It lives in every hand that builds, every voice that teaches, every heart that refuses to quit. He paused, scanning the crowd, his eyes landing on me. My father gave me this name. My mother taught me how to deserve it. This legacy is hers as much as his. Applause filled the hall, echoing like thunder. I felt my throat tighten, tears pricking my eyes. After the event, Jamal and I walked out into the night air. The city lights shimmered across the skyline, and somewhere far off, a train horn cut through the quiet, the same sound Rob used to love when he worked late in the garage. Jamal slipped his arm around my shoulders. You ready to head home, Mama? Home? I repeated, tasting the word. Funny how it's not a place anymore. It's this. You, me, what we built, he smiled. Then I guess we finally found it. As we drove back to the coast later that night, I rested my hand on the gold pocket watch in my purse. I pressed the lid open, listening to the quiet tick that had outlived its owner. It no longer felt like a reminder of what was lost. It was proof of what endured. The next morning, I stood on the beach outside the cottage, the waves brushing my feet. The ocean was calm, the horizon endless. I whispered into the wind, We did everything you asked, Rob. We kept your promise and we found our peace. The breeze answered softly, carrying warmth instead of ache. I smiled, lifting my face toward the rising sun. We had come full circle, from inheritance to understanding, from betrayal to forgiveness, from time lost to truth found. Rob had always said, "Some legacies are built from money. Ours was built from love." And standing there, the sea stretching before me, I finally understood. Love was the only thing that never depreciated. The summer storm came without warning. One moment the horizon glowed with honey light, the next it darkened into bruised gray. I had seen plenty of tempests sweep over Sullivan's Island before, but this one was different, stronger, faster, and merciless. The radio issued warnings, the wind howled against the cottage windows, and the Atlantic turned black and wild. I tried calling Jamal, but the signal crackled. When it finally connected, his voice broke through the static. "Mama, I'm already on the way. They're saying the river's rising near the city, and the old garage might flood. I'm heading there to move the equipment." "Jamal, no!" I shouted. "You can't fight the weather. Let it pass." "I have to," he insisted. "The kids' projects, the scholarships, everything we worked for. It's all there." Before I could stop him, the line cut out. The wind screamed harder, bending the trees. I paced the living room, clutching Rob's pocket watch, praying the storm would pass quickly. The seconds felt like hours. When the lights flickered out, I lit candles, the room glowing gold and trembling with shadows. Thunder cracked overhead like a warning from heaven. The next morning, the storm had weakened but left devastation in its wake. News channels reported flash floods in downtown Atlanta. Roads submerged. Power lines down. And one image stopped my heart, a brief shot of the Brooks Auto Heritage Hall, its entrance half underwater. I grabbed my coat, locked the cottage, and began the 5-hour drive north through winding back roads and rain-drenched highways. By the time I reached Atlanta, emergency crews were already draining the streets. The air smelled of mud and metal. I turned onto Vine Street, my chest tight with dread. The garage stood battered but upright. The mural on the side, Rob's face painted in sepia tones, was streaked with rain but still visible, as if refusing to be erased. I jumped out of the car, sloshing through knee-high puddles, shouting his name. "Jamal!" A moment later, I saw him, soaked, muddy, exhausted, helping firefighters pump water out of the lower bays. When our eyes met, relief flooded his face. "Mama!" He ran toward me, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "I'm okay. We lost a few tools, some documents, but the structure's solid." Tears burst from my eyes. "I told you not to come here," he smiled weakly. "I know. But I couldn't let it all wash away." "None of this matters more than your life," I said, gripping his arms. "Your father didn't build this for you to die saving it." "I didn't come to save the building," he whispered. "I came to protect the people who believe in it." Behind him, I noticed a group of kids, his students, handing out bottled water to volunteers, carrying boxes of supplies. Even in chaos, they were learning, serving, rebuilding. My heart swelled with pride. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a test. By sunset, the floodwater had receded enough to assess the damage. Inside, the floor was coated in mud, walls damp, posters ruined. But the engines, the workbenches, and the central mural survived. Jamal stood in the doorway, shoulders heavy but unbroken. "We'll rebuild," he said firmly. "Again, if we have to." I walked beside him, my shoes squelching in the muck. "You sound just like your father," he chuckled softly. "Guess it runs in the family." Over the following weeks, the community came together. Volunteers cleaned debris, local businesses donated materials, and the very kids who once looked up to Jamal now worked beside him. The story spread across the city, how a flood had tried to wash away a dream but couldn't drown the spirit behind it. One afternoon, a journalist asked me, "Mrs. Brooks, aren't you tired of rebuilding the same legacy over and over?" I smiled gently. "You don't rebuild the same thing. You build it stronger every time." When the Heritage Hall reopened a month later, it wasn't just restored, it was reborn. New floors, new lights, stronger foundations. The mural was repainted, this time with 3 faces, Rob, Jamal, and mine, connected by the words, Legacy endures through storms. At the rededication ceremony, Jamal took my hand as the crowd clapped. "You know," he whispered, "I think Dad sent that storm to test us, to see if what he built could really last." I looked around at the faces, young and old, tired and joyful, wet with sweat and tears, and I said softly, "It did. Because now it's not just his legacy. It's ours." That evening, after everyone left, I walked alone through the empty garage. The scent of oil and fresh paint mingled with the echo of laughter still hanging in the air. I touched the mural gently, tracing Rob's smile with my fingertips. "Another test passed," I murmured. "We didn't break, love. We just bent." Outside, the sky was clear again, washed clean by rain. The stars blinked over Atlanta like blessings written across the dark, and for the first time, I realized that legacy isn't tested in quiet. It's proven in the storm. Winter came softly to the Low Country that year, the kind that whispered instead of howled. The sea was calmer, the air crisp, and the nights carried a quiet that felt sacred. The Brooks Auto Heritage Hall thrived more than ever, rebuilt, renewed, alive with purpose. Each week brought new faces, new dreams, new stories written on top of the old ones. But life, as I'd learned, always saves its last revelation for the right moment. It came one chilly morning in late January. I was at the cottage, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sun rise pale and gold over the waves. A courier truck pulled up outside. The man handed me a small, weathered package marked simply, "From the estate of Henry Robb Brooks, Post-Delivery Directive." My breath caught. After everything, the letters, the keys, the vault, there was still one more message. I sat down at the table, hands trembling as I opened it. Inside was a single sealed envelope, a small silver locket, and a note addressed in his familiar handwriting. "For when the storms have passed." I unfolded the letter. His voice came alive again through the words. "My Evie, if you're reading this, then you've walked through every test I ever feared life would give you. I didn't leave you the garage because I wanted to burden you. I left it because I knew it would bring you back to the world. You spent years carrying everyone else's dreams. I wanted to give you one that was yours. Something to fight for. Something that would heal what our family lost. If Jamal is beside you now, then I can rest easy knowing you both found the meaning behind the madness. I built things with my hands, but you built something greater, understanding. The locket you hold belonged to my mother. Inside it, you'll find a photograph, her and my father standing in front of the original Brooks Auto, 1958. They started this journey with hope, and I wanted you to have that symbol now. Evie, when you think of me, don't think of loss. Think of the road we built together, rough, winding, but always leading home. I'll see you in every sunrise over the ocean and in every smile that comes from the garage. Love beyond the limits of time." Rob tears blurred the page. I opened the locket, and sure enough, there they were. Two young faces smiling before the first Brooks Auto. Behind them, a hand-painted sign read, "Brooks and Son Garage." But what caught my eye wasn't the picture. It was a folded scrap of paper hidden behind the photo. I pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. Rob's handwriting, faint but legible, read, "If you ever doubt what we built, look at the lives still being built because of it. That's where I'll always be." I pressed the locket to my heart and whispered, "You never really left me, did you?" Later that week, Jamal visited the cottage. When I showed him the locket, he smiled gently. "He knew exactly when you'd need that," he said. "He always did," I whispered. We sat on the porch together, the waves rolling soft and endless. Jamal looked older now, wiser, calmer, carrying not just Rob's name but his spirit. "I'm expanding the program," he said. "We're opening another branch in Savannah next year. The first satellite of the Heritage Hall. I want to call it Rob's promise. I smiled, tears glistening. That's perfect. As the evening light faded, we talked about everything and nothing. About Rob's laugh, his stubbornness, his quiet brilliance. For the first time, those memories didn't ache. They glowed. When Jamal left, I stayed outside long after sunset. The stars shimmered over the ocean, bright and close. I held the locket in my palm and whispered into the night. We made it, love. You can rest now. And so can I. A warm breeze swept across the water, lifting the edge of my shawl. The sound of the waves softened into something almost like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, eternal. In that moment, I knew the truth Rob had been trying to teach us all along. Love doesn't end when life does. It transforms into legacy, into purpose, into everything we leave behind for others to build upon. I closed my eyes, smiling as peace finally settled where grief once lived. And as the tide rolled in, washing the footprints from the sand, I whispered one last time, "Good night, my love. You built a forever that even time couldn't erase."